They wore the uniform, they took an oath. But what they did will haunt the history of the U.S. military forever. From shocking murders to chilling betrayals, this is the untold truth of American soldiers sentenced to life in prison. Sergeant First Class Joseph Santiago was once a respected U.S. Army soldier, serving in the prestigious 5th Special Forces Group at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He joined the Army in 2007 and dedicated over a decade of his life to military service as a signal support specialist, a job that demands discipline, loyalty, and precision. On September 16, 2021, Santiago did the unthinkable behind the walls of their on-base residence. He assaulted his 33-year-old wife, Megan Santiago, who was 8 months pregnant at the time. The attack left her with life-threatening injuries. She was rushed to Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee, where doctors performed emergency surgery to save both mother and child. Despite their efforts, Megan died from her injuries less than 2 weeks later. Her baby girl, however, survived the traumatic birth and was reported in stable condition. Santiago was arrested the very next day and taken to Grayson County Jail as the U.S. Criminal Investigation Division opened a full investigation. During the court-martial, chilling evidence was brought forward. Megan had confided in friends and family, sharing messages and photos that revealed her deepest fear. She believed Joseph would kill her. Some of those close to her had even planned to intervene. But time ran out. An emergency responder who arrived at the scene later testified that when they asked about Megan's medical history, Joseph coldly said he didn't know. And sadly, that wasn't the only red flag hiding in plain sight. Santiago's own mother testified in court. Through tears, she revealed that Joseph had grown up in a violent household, witnessing his own father abuse her. She admitted she should have removed him from that environment. His father, on the other hand, denied the abuse entirely. It was a painful glimpse into a broken cycle, one that Joseph chose to repeat. When it came time for Santiago to speak, he broke down in sobs. Facing Megan's grieving family, he said he was sorry and asked for forgiveness. He admitted he failed as a husband and a father and said he missed his wife. But remorse wasn't enough to stop justice. Santiago pleaded not guilty, but the court found him guilty of murder and injury to an unborn child, violating Articles 118 and 119A of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. He was acquitted of 2 domestic violence charges, but it didn't save him. On August 2, 2023, Joseph Santiago was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus an extra 6 months for injuring his child. He was reduced to the rank of E1 private and given a dishonorable discharge. And now the man once trusted to serve his country will spend the rest of his life behind bars. As of April 2025, he's served about 1 year and 8 months in a military correctional facility. But Santiago wasn't the only soldier hiding a dark secret. In Iraq, one man turned his weapon on his own brothers. Sergeant Joseph C. Bozicevich, 55, was once considered a man of duty and discipline. Born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, he enlisted in the U.S. Army and steadily climbed the ranks. He was assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 7th Infantry Regiment, 4th Brigade Combat Team, and the 3rd Infantry Division. Sounds like a soldier living his duty, but duty was about to take a dark and deadly turn. In 2008, Bozicevich was deployed to Iraq, stationed at Patrol Base Jerf at Sakur near Baghdad. On September 14th, something unthinkable happened, something that would haunt the military community for years. That day, Bozicevich got into a heated argument with 2 fellow soldiers, Staff Sergeant Darius Dawson and Sergeant Wesley Durbin. They had confronted him over what they described as his poor performance. But what began as criticism spiraled into chaos. Moments after the confrontation, Bozicevich opened fire. Both Dawson and Durbin were fatally shot. According to witnesses, Bozicevich didn't just shoot them, he hunted them. He reportedly shouted, "I'm going to murder you," before pulling the trigger. Even as one soldier tried to flee and begged for his life, Bozicevich kept firing. After the killings, Bozicevich was shockingly calm. Witnesses recall him saying, "I did it. So what?" Words that chilled everyone at the base to the bone. He was immediately apprehended and charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder. But the real battle was just beginning in the courtroom. His court-martial began on April 20th, 2011 at Fort Stewart, Georgia. The trial stretched over 100 days, with delays due to his defense attorney being injured mid-proceeding. Bozicevich claimed he acted in self-defense, that he was threatened, disarmed both men using martial arts, and fired blindly while escaping. He called it a panic reaction. He sprayed and prayed. But the evidence would paint a very different picture. The prosecution came armed with damning testimony and hard facts. Eyewitnesses disputed Bozicevich's story, and his own statements contradicted the idea of fear or panic. This wasn't chaos. It was cold-blooded murder. On May 25th, 2011, the verdict came down. Guilty on both counts of premeditated murder. The punishment was severe: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He was demoted to private, dishonorably discharged, and stripped of all pay and allowances. But even after his conviction, one final moment stood out. Just before being taken away, Bozicevich made a request to see his son one last time. The government granted it, a rare moment of humanity in a story marked by horror. As of April 2025, Bozicevich has served nearly 14 years of his life sentence. He remains behind bars at the U.S. disciplinary barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and he'll likely never walk free again. From a battlefield betrayal to a deadly night in paradise, what happened in Hawaii would shock the nation. Master Sergeant Nathaniel L. Cosby was a decorated U.S. Marine, 38 years old and serving as an explosive ordnance disposal technician with Marine Wing Support Squadron 171, under the 1st Marine Aircraft Wing, based in Iwakuni, Japan. In May 2013, Cosby was temporarily assigned to Hickam Field in Hawaii, assisting a joint POWMIA recovery command. On the surface, it looked like just another honorable deployment, but beneath the uniform was a dark and dangerous secret waiting to explode. On May 16, 2013, Cosby crossed paths with Yvonne Ivy Harris, a 29-year-old woman from Portland, Oregon, who had traveled to Hawaii to celebrate her birthday. Later developments revealed that Harris had allegedly been brought to Hawaii by her boyfriend, Mark Miles, to work as an escort for wealthy clients. That night, she met Cosby at a bar in Waikiki. Surveillance footage shows the two entering Cosby's hotel together. It was the last time Ivy Harris was seen alive. The next morning, hotel cameras captured Cosby struggling to move a large, heavy bag into an SUV. On May 20th, 2013, Harris's body was discovered near Yokohama Bay, along Oahu's western shoreline. The autopsy confirmed she died from a neck injury. She was 4 weeks pregnant. Her death was ruled a homicide. And if that wasn't horrifying enough, what came next was even more disturbing. Just as Cosby was preparing to leave the island, he was arrested at the airport by Honolulu police. But despite the suspicions, he was released without charges due to insufficient evidence. He returned to base and resumed duties like any other Marine, free to come and go. He nearly walked away, but justice was only getting started. Eventually, the Marine Corps took jurisdiction and Cosby faced a court-martial at Marine Corps Base Hawaii in Kaneohe. There, he admitted to killing Ivy Harris, but claimed it was in self-defense. According to Cosby, after a night of drinking, Harris demanded money and attacked him with a knife. He said he placed her in a chokehold, accidentally killing her. Fearing shame and disgrace, he disposed of her body to avoid embarrassment. But his excuse couldn't mask the cold reality of his actions. The military jury didn't buy it. Cosby was found guilty of unpremeditated murder, obstructing justice, and attempting to patronize a street worker. He was sentenced to life in prison, dishonorably discharged, reduced in rank, and stripped of all pay and benefits. He even tried to rewrite the story, but the truth came crashing down. During sentencing, Cosby insisted again that he acted in self-defense. He even admitted to lying during the investigation, telling authorities he had nothing to do with her death, when he knew the truth all along. As of May 2025, Nathaniel L. Cosby is serving his life sentence at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, a maximum security military prison built for the worst of the worst. But sometimes the threat isn't cold-blooded murder. It's a war inside the mind, one that no one sees coming, like in the case of Ray Routh. A 25-year-old Ray Routh, Marine from Lancaster, Texas, once dreamed of serving his country. Born in Lancaster, Texas, he joined the U.S. Marine Corps shortly after high school, fulfilling a childhood ambition. From 2006 to 2010, Routh served in Iraq as a prison guard and weapons tech, and later helped with humanitarian relief in Haiti. But after leaving the military, something inside him broke. Diagnosed with severe PTSD, Eddie began suffering from paranoia, hallucinations, and deep depression. Though doctors prescribed medication and recommended hospitalization, he refused treatment and slowly unraveled. Then came the day that changed everything, February 2nd, 2013. That morning, Chris Kyle, the most lethal sniper in U.S. history and author of American Sniper, had set out on a mission of a different kind. After hearing from Ruth's mother, who worked at the school where Kyle's children studied, Chris agreed to help her troubled son. He thought time at a shooting range might offer some therapy. Kyle invited his close friend, Chad Littlefield, to join, but the signs of danger were there. During the drive to Rough Creek Lodge in Chalk Mountain, Texas, Kyle sent a chilling text to Littlefield. "This dude is straight up nuts." Littlefield replied with just 3 words, "Watch your 6." A military warning to watch your back. Then, without warning, Ruth pulled out his firearm and opened fire. Chris Kyle was shot 6 times, Chad 7. The precision and placement of the shots suggested cold, calculated murder. Afterward, Routh calmly drove off in Kyle's truck, stopped at Taco Bell for food, and later visited his sister. He told her what he'd done and left to pick up his dog. His sister called 911 immediately. Police arrested Routh after he crashed into a patrol car during an attempted escape. At trial, his defense argued that he was legally insane, but prosecutors insisted he knew exactly what he was doing and pointed to his actions after the killings as proof. Routh even admitted he shot Kyle and Littlefield because they were talking to each other, but not to me. The jury took less than 3 hours to convict him of capital murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Today, Routh remains incarcerated at the Ramsey Unit in Brazoria County, Texas. What began as an effort to help a struggling veteran ended in unimaginable tragedy. After Kyle's death, thousands gathered at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, to pay their respects. Flags waved, tears flowed, and a nation mourned the loss of a warrior who once protected his country, only to be gunned down by the very man he tried to save. But mental turmoil doesn't always explode in public. Sometimes it brews behind closed doors, like it did for Jordan Michael Henning. At 34 years old, Staff Sergeant Jordan Michael Henning had built a life around discipline, duty, and the uniform. Stationed at Fort Knox, Kentucky, he served with the 1st Army Division East, having enlisted in the U.S. Army back in 2008 and completing multiple deployments. His wife, Ashley Henning, was no stranger to service either. She worked in Human Resources Command, also on base. 2 active duty military members raising a family under the same roof. But behind that perfect Army household was a storm no one saw coming. Those who knew Jordan say he'd been struggling in silence. For years, he spoke of emotional distress, describing his marriage to Ashley as toxic. filled with psychological and allegedly physical abuse. He confided in friends that the relationship was wearing him down. The tension was unbearable. And on Ashley's birthday, everything came crashing down. On June 26, 2023, during what was supposed to be a joyous 37th birthday party for Ashley at their home in Rhineyville, Kentucky, an argument broke out as the couple cleaned up after guests had left. Surveillance footage captured the tense exchange. Despite witnesses trying to intervene, things escalated quickly. Worried neighbors removed the children from the scene. One of Ashley's sons ran to a neighbor, Jimmy Watts, begging for help. When Watts tried to intervene, Henning allegedly put him in a headlock and threatened him. Watts managed to escape and immediately called 911. Henning, now in a rage, ran upstairs and retrieved a firearm. He later claimed he feared Watts might return armed, though both Watts and another witness denied this. Surveillance footage captured Ashley pleading for him to put the gun down. She was sitting calmly on the patio. That's when Jordan opened fire 4 times. Ashley stumbled into the kitchen, wounded, as his firearm ran out of bullets. It could have ended there, but the cruelty wasn't finished. Jordan calmly reloaded his weapon, returned, and fired a final, fatal shot. Then he spat on her body. The entire brutal attack was caught on interior surveillance cameras. Law enforcement responded to the 911 call at 9:45 p.m. Inside, they found Ashley with multiple gunshot wounds. She was rushed to the hospital, but it was already too late. Meanwhile, Jordan had fled the scene. He was located about a mile away and taken into custody. When apprehended, he expressed deep remorse, admitting that he had hurt the one person who mattered most. But was it guilt or regret for getting caught? Henning was arrested and charged with murder and domestic violence. His trial began in March 2025. His defense? That he acted under extreme emotional disturbance, citing years of marital strife, substance abuse, and even possible testosterone supplementation affecting his state of mind. During sentencing, the most heartbreaking moment came when his 13-year-old daughter took the stand, describing how her mother's death had shattered her world. Though Henning did not deliver a final statement, he repeatedly apologized from the stand, admitting, "I destroyed lives that day." His parents and sister also expressed sorrow for Ashley's death, directing their grief toward her family. Ultimately, the jury delivered a verdict of first-degree manslaughter, a lesser charge than murder. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. But justice for many felt incomplete. Ashley's cousin, Marine Corps Chief Warrant Officer John Williams, voiced his anger over the lenient verdict only to be reprimanded by the judge for speaking out. As of April 2025, Jordan Michael Henning is incarcerated in a Kentucky State Correctional Facility, having served 1 year and 10 months of his 20-year sentence. He won't be eligible for parole until he completes at least 85% of his term. However, Jordan Henning wasn't the only one hiding demons in uniform. The next soldier didn't just run from justice, he left a trail of destruction while trying to escape it. Private Jonathan Kang Lee, 26, once wore the uniform of the U.S. Army, stationed at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington. As a signal intelligence analyst for the 201st Expeditionary Military Intelligence Brigade, he was part of the nation's defense system. Born in Virginia, Lee enlisted in the Army back in 2017, claiming he was escaping years of abuse from his parents. For a while, it worked. His deployment to Afghanistan gave him what he called a sense of purpose. But when he returned to the States, that purpose began to twist into something much darker. After returning to the U.S. in 2019, Lee's life spiraled. Between June 2020 and February 2022, he sexually assaulted his 2 stepdaughters, one only 8 years old, the other just 4. He was charged and scheduled for a court-martial on January 14, 2024. Just 2 days before sentencing, Lee deserted the Army. He fled in a white 2011 Honda Pilot SUV, driving away from base. But his getaway quickly hit a snag. His car broke down. Stranded, Lee paid a tow truck driver to remove the vehicle and then hailed a taxi, driven by 34-year-old Nicholas Hoka. Lee requested a ride to South Center Mall in Tukwila, Washington. But what should have been a routine fare ended up as a murder scene. During the ride, Lee and Hoka got into an argument over the fare. Lee was low on money. When they arrived at the mall, CCTV captured a scuffle in the car. Suddenly, and without mercy, Lee stabbed Nicholas multiple times, killing him on the spot. He then dumped his body in the mall parking lot and stole the taxi. The next morning, police discovered Nicholas's body and launched a full-scale manhunt. In the meantime, Lee had already been convicted in absentia for the assault of his stepdaughters, receiving 64 years in prison and a dishonorable discharge from the military. But Lee had taken the stolen taxi to Redmond, where his girlfriend lived. When police tracked the vehicle there, they found him, but he refused to go quietly. What followed was a dramatic showdown that could have ended in another tragedy. As officers moved in, Lee jumped from a 2-story window, resisted arrest, and even tried to grab an officer's gun, but he was subdued and finally taken into custody. In April 2025, Lee pleaded guilty to multiple charges: murder, desertion, resisting arrest, and failure to obey lawful orders. In court, he admitted to stabbing Nicholas Hoka, fully aware that Nicholas was unarmed and only trying to collect the fare. There was no self-defense, just cold-blooded murder. Lee received a life sentence with the possibility of parole, to be served consecutively with his prior 64-year sentence. He won't be eligible for parole until 2045 at the earliest. As of April 2025, Jonathan Kang Lee is locked inside the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. He's only served 1 year and 3 months of what could be the rest of his life. And just when you think it couldn't get any worse, it does. Imagine a 19-year-old U.S. Army soldier who turned a war zone into a crime scene. Private Stephen Dale Green, deployed to Iraq in 2005 with the 101st Airborne Division, was stationed in an area infamously called the Triangle of Death. But what he did wasn't just a tragedy of war, it was pure evil. On March 12, 2006, Green and 3 other soldiers, James Barker, Paul Cortez, and Jesse Spielman, got drunk, talked about assaulting a 14-year-old Iraqi girl named Abir Qasim al-Janabi, and then acted on it. They broke into her home. Green shot her father, mother, and 6-year-old sister point blank. Then, while his fellow soldiers took turns raping Abir, Green waited. After he was done, he shot her in the face and set her body on fire. Initially, the crime was blamed on insurgents, but when another soldier heard confessions, he reported it. A full investigation followed. Green had already been discharged from the Army due to a personality disorder, so the Department of Justice charged him as a civilian. In 2009, he was sentenced to life without parole. Fast forward to February 2014, and Green was found dead in his cell, having taken his own life. Before he died, he reportedly said he was just a pawn, paying for a war crime. These aren't just stories about individuals. They're reflections of a broken system where mental health, trauma, and unchecked violence collide. Behind every headline is a victim whose story deserves to be remembered. What are your thoughts on these cases? Are we doing enough to prevent tragedies like this? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that reveal the hidden truth behind the headlines.